The term exam, does it evoke fear in you? There's no need, provided you prepare well for the exams. So here I am, Biji Suresh, to help you with Class 10 CBSE Biology. We'll be discussing some important questions from Chapter 8, How do organisms reproduce? So let's start off with some multiple choice questions. Look at the first question. It's a diagram and you have to mark the portions A, B and C correctly. So there are options given here, 4 options given here. So have a look at that picture. You can see the part marked as A, those 2 large structures. You identify they are the cotyledons. So A is supposed to be cotyledons. So here we have option D with A showing cotyledon, B is plumule and C part is radicle which develops into the root system. Second question is, a feature of reproduction that is common in amoeba, spirogyra and yeast is that? Let's see the options. Are they unicellular? Yeast may be unicellular but not spirogyra. So that's not the answer. They reproduce asexually. Yes, that could be the answer. They are all multicellular. Definitely not. Yeast is not multicellular. They reproduce only sexually. No, you know about budding in yeast. So that's not the correct answer anyway. So the correct option here is B. All 3 of them reproduce asexually. The third question is, identify the correct sequence of organs in the male reproductive system for transport of sperms. So all the 4 options are starting with testis. The second option, if it is ureter, that is not the correct answer. Ureter, you know, is related to the kidneys. Both the kidneys have tubes coming from them, emerging from them, which are called ureters. So it can't be that. And you have already studied that the main tube for carrying sperms is vas deferens. So it is there, that option is there in C and D. After testis, it is vas deferens in both these options. Now let's look at the third term given. In C option, it is urethra and in D option, it is ureter. It can't be ureter, it has to be urethra. So the correct answer is C, option C. So those were the multiple choice questions. You think about them intelligently and rule out the wrong answers and select the correct answer. Now let's discuss some short answer questions. Why is DNA copying an important part in the process of reproduction? This is because DNA is our genetic material which is responsible for making proteins. If the information is changed, like I said, wrong body proteins will be formed. Next question, what is variation? Variations are the differences between parents and offsprings. Offsprings generally resemble their parents, but they show slight differences also, which are called variations. Why is variation beneficial to a species, but not necessarily for an individual? See, the individual which developed that variation may not immediately find any use of it, but it will pass it on to the offsprings. And over time, when environmental conditions change, under those changed conditions, probably only those with the variations needed for survival can remain. Write about 3 different kinds of fission seen in organisms. Fission means body dividing into 2 or many. So if it is dividing into many parts, it is called multiple fission. Example is Plasmodium, a pathogen which causes malaria. It is spread through the vector, female Anopheles mosquito. And in your textbook, there is such a picture given. What is that? It is the plasmodium undergoing repeated divisions of the nucleus and the cytoplasm, forming a number of daughter cells around which there is a cyst or a protective covering, and later when it bursts open, the young daughter cells are released. The second type of fission is binary fission. Bi means two, the body dividing into two. So in the case of amoeba, binary fission can happen in any plane. It could be like this or any other plane, and you get two daughter cells. Binary fission is also shown by leishmania, which is a pathogen that causes the disease Kala Azar. But though the body is splitting into two parts, it will split only in a definite plane, only in a single plane in relation to a particular structure, a flagellum-like structure which is responsible for its locomotion. So if you see this picture, this is leishmania and you can see the flagellum. So another flagellum is developing, the nucleus is dividing, and in the last picture you can see the cytoplasm has also divided and it has become two daughter cells. So if it splits like this, then two daughter cells will not be formed because the other cell also needs this flagellum. So there it is binary fission, but only in a definite plane. Differentiate binary fission from multiple fission. Binary fission, from the name you can understand, the nucleus divides into two and it forms two daughter individuals. This generally happens during favorable seasons. So there is no protective cyst formed around the daughter cells. But if it is multiple fission, the nucleus divides several times to form many daughter individuals. It can happen during unfavorable seasons. So in that case, there will be a protective cyst formed around the daughter cells. Name an organism that reproduces by the method of fragmentation. The answer is a filamentous green alga by the name Spirogyra. It is commonly found in ponds and looks like this, like green hair-like structures. And when it is mature, the parent body just splits into tiny bits and each bit or fragment develops into a new organism. Colonies of yeast fail to multiply in water but do so in sugar solution. Why? The reason is very simple. Only sugar solution can give it energy. Energy is required for any living organism for all its body activities. Why is regeneration not possible in higher organisms? First thing is that the specialized cells to carry out regeneration may not be present in living organisms which are of the higher level, the eukaryotes. Their body is highly complicated and they also show division of labor. So simple mechanisms like regeneration may not function properly in them. But regeneration is shown by this worm called planaria. Look at this picture. This single worm was given two cuts. It developed three parts. Okay, it got broken into three parts. Now the head part is developing the rear part. The middle part is developing both head and the rear part. And the rear portion is developing the front portion. So ultimately you are getting 3 planaria. What is tissue culture? Give the benefits of this technique. Tissue culture or micropropagation is a process of growing an entire plant from just a small tissue, from just a few cells which are placed in a culture medium. And the benefits are, it can help to create disease-free plants. Certain cultivated crops, like for example banana, it may develop viral diseases which will easily spread to the next plant. So you will have to remove that plant, slash it and burn it. But then if it's a good variety, it will be lost. But you can preserve it by just taking a few cells from the growing tip and keeping it in agar-agar medium so that it can grow back. The reason why cells from the growing tip was taken is because those apical cells, the apical meristematic cells, will not contain the virus. So though the original plant is destroyed, it can still be brought back with just those few cells. The second reason is, it can easily help to grow ornamental plants or those which are on the verge of extinction. So here you see there are 2 test tubes with the nutrient medium in agar-agar, and tiny plantlets have grown from a few cells. What are the blobs that develop at the tips of hyphae in the case of Rhizopus? The answer is sporangia. And name the thread-like non-reproductive structure in Rhizopus. The answer is hyphae. Here's a picture of the bread mold, Rhizopus, which spoils your bread. And this blob is called the sporangium. So here you find the filamentous structures called the hyphae, and the blob is called the sporangium, which contains in it spores. And later on, when it is mature, it will just burst, releasing the spores into the outer environment. What are the advantages of spore formation? Large number of spores are produced at a time. They can withstand harsh climatic conditions. They are easily dispersed to far off places by wind currents. In which part of bryophyllum are buds produced for vegetative propagation? The answer is leaf. In the leaf notches, like this. In the edges you can see there are leaf buds and roots. So later on these buds fall off and they can develop into an independent plant. Compare unisexual and bisexual flowers. Unisexual flower, uni means one, it will contain either stamen or pistil. So it's either a male flower or a female flower. Which are the examples? Papaya and watermelon. But a bisexual flower, bi means two, it will contain both male and female parts in a single flower, like hibiscus, that is a shoe flower, mustard, etc. Define pollination and classify it. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Stigma is the female part, the upper sticky part. And this happens through agencies like wind, water, insects, and other animals. We can classify pollination into 2 types as self-pollination and cross-pollination. As the name implies, in self-pollination, the pollen grains fall on the stigma of the same flower or on a different flower on the same plant. If it is cross-pollination, The pollen grains will fall on the flower of a different plant. What happens when pollen grains fall on the stigma? Immediately, pollen tube will germinate and it will grow down through the stigma and style, and finally it will reach the ovary. There it will fuse with the ovules and 2 male gametes are released for fertilization. You can see in this picture the stigma, style and ovary with the ovules. So over here, 2 pollen grains have fallen on the stigma. Both have started germinating. The second one, you can see its pollen tube has grown long and reached the ovary part. And it has brought in 2 male gametes. Why 2 male gametes? For double fertilization. The 2 fertilizations are syngamy and triple fusion. Syngamy refers to the first male gamete fusing with the egg to form the zygote, which will later on become the embryo or the baby plant. So it is diploid, having 2n number of chromosomes. What is the second male gamete for? The second male gamete fuses with the 2 polar nuclei and it will form the endosperm, the reserve food material called endosperm, which is triploid. It is having 3n number of chromosomes. What is the fate of fertilized ovary and ovules? Ovary will soon turn into the fruit and the ovules inside it will become the seeds. Which are the parts of a germinating seed? The important parts are cotyledon, which has the reserve food material, radicle, which will later on grow down and develop into the root system, and the third part is plumule, which grows upward and develops into the shoot system. So here's a picture of a seed. You can see inside the seed there is a huge cotyledon, 2 cotyledons in dicot, single in monocot, and here's the baby plant. So the upper region is called the epicotyle, which will develop into the shoot and the leaves. The other region called hypocotyle will make a connection between the cotyledon and the radicle so that the radicle can grow downward. And outside there is a protective seed coat. What is the special property of seeds? Their property is dormancy. That is, it can remain inactive for many years. It will break the dormancy and germinate only when the outside environmental conditions are congenial, are favorable. Otherwise, if it simply germinates during an unfavorable season, the baby plant will die out. Name the sex hormones in human male and female. In male it is testosterone and in female it is estrogen. Give another name for hermaphrodite organism. Bisexual. It's an animal in which there are both male and female in the same organism. Example, lower organisms like leech, earthworm, tapeworm, liver fluke, etc. See the earthworm, inside it there will be the testis as well as the ovary in a single individual. So it's called a hermaphrodite. Compare gametogenesis in human male and female. Gametogenesis means gametes being formed. That is sperm in male and ovum in female. So formation of sperms is called spermatogenesis. Where does it occur? In the testis It starts only at puberty. Many sperms are produced at the same time. Sperms have head, middle piece and tail, and they are motile, which means they can move on their own. By lashing their tail, they can move. So, the pair of testes, the main tube to carry them is the vas deferens. Then, it meets here, and here there are the accessory glands like seminal vesicle, prostate gland, etc. And the sperms are released through the external genital structure called the penis. Oogenesis is the formation of ovum. It happens in the ovary of female. It had begun long time back when the girl child was a fetus in the mother's womb, but the divisions got arrested at a particular stage. And then further it continues only after puberty, when the menstrual cycle starts. Only a single ovum is produced every 28 days. The ovum is rounded in shape and it is non-motile. It cannot move on its own. So here are the pair of ovaries. Both the fallopian tubes join together in a part called uterus or the womb. The narrow part of the uterus is called the cervix and the lower part is called the vagina. Why is testis of male placed outside the body? It is placed outside the body in a pouch called scrotum so that the temperature is 2 to 2.5 degrees lower than body temperature, which is very essential for sperms to be alive. Otherwise, in our body temperature, the sperms will be dead and the person will be impotent. Name the male and female reproductive ducts. Ducts are the main tubes to carry the gametes. So, oviduct or fallopian tube in the case of female and vas deferens in the case of male. Name the accessory glands in male. Prostate gland and seminal vesicle. Their secretions give nutrition to the sperms. They also help to transport the sperms easily into the female. Give the functions of estrogen. This female hormone is vital for the formation of ovum. It is also needed for secondary sexual characters developing in the female. Name the hormone that maintains pregnancy. It is progesterone. Define the term implantation. It refers to the attachment of the embryo to the wall of the inner wall of the uterus called the endometrium. And only if there is implantation will there be pregnancy. So here you can see this in pink color is the inner wall of the uterus, and the ovum, the fertilized ovum had come down through the fallopian tube, reached the womb or the uterus, and now that embryo, a ball-like embryo, is attaching into the cells of the endometrium. So this attachment is called implantation. What is gestation period? It is the time period for which the fetus remains in the mother's womb, which is the disc-like special tissue that develops between the wall of the uterus and the fetus. The answer is placenta. It looks like this. This is an original picture. This is the placenta, and this cord is the umbilical cord, which will be connected to the navel of the baby, navel or the belly button of the baby. Give the functions of placenta. Very important functions. It will help to pass oxygen and nutrients from the mother's blood into the fetus. It will also remove unwanted things like carbon dioxide, urea and other wastes from the fetus into the mother's blood. So here's a picture of the baby, the fetus. The embryo is when it is a ball-like shape. Once it starts taking human shape, it is called a fetus. And this is the umbilical cord attached to the belly button, to the belly of the baby. So later on when the baby is born, that area remains as the belly button or the navel. And you can see the head of the baby is quite big compared to the other body parts. And this covering, that is called the amnion. And the baby is lying in a fluid called the amniotic fluid. Then you might ask, how is it breathing? It is not yet breathing through the nose, through the lungs. It is breathing through that cord. Only when it is born and when that cord is cut and the fetus is separated from the mother, at that time when it cries, when it takes the first gulp of air, that is when its lungs will become functional. What happens if the egg is not fertilized? If it is not fertilized, then there is no chance of pregnancy. So by day 28, the next menstrual cycle will start. So the blood vessels will break down, and along with blood and mucus, the unfertilized ovum is also released from the body of the female. How does childbirth occur? It occurs because of a hormone called oxytocin or the birth hormone, which is secreted from the pituitary gland under the brain of the mother. So this hormone, oxytocin, will cause uterine contractions, which will become stronger later on, ultimately pushing the baby out. What are STDs? Give examples. They are sexually transmitted diseases. Examples are gonorrhea and syphilis that are caused by bacteria. Even viruses can cause STDs like genital warts and the deadly one, AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Which are the different contraceptive methods? Contraceptives are methods which will prevent the union of gametes, or even if there is union of gametes and embryo forms, the embryo will not be able to implant in the uterus, thereby preventing pregnancy. So the different contraceptive methods are, the first one is barrier methods like condoms. This barrier can also protect from STDs. The second one is IUDs, intrauterine devices. From the name you can understand, inside the uterus. These are placed inside the uterus to prevent pregnancy. Very good example is copper T, loop, etc. Over here, you identify the female reproductive system in which a T-shaped structure, a copper T has been placed, which will liberate copper ions that will kill the sperms. Third method is oral contraceptive pills. These pills change the hormonal balance of the body so that implantation will not happen or ovum release is delayed. The fourth method is sterilization or surgical method, where the ducts carrying the gametes are blocked, permanently blocked through a minor surgery. So if it is done in the male, it is called vasectomy, and if it is done in the female, it is called tubectomy. Here's a picture showing tubectomy. You identify that the fallopian tube on both sides is cut and tied up. So even if the ovum is liberated from the ovary, It can pass only up till that cut area. Why do couples adopt various contraceptive methods? To restrict the number of children in the family, to control population of that country, to give gap between births, to enjoy good reproductive health, and barriers can even protect from STDs. Why is sex determination by amniocentesis prevented by law? You can know the gender of the unborn baby by a technique called amniocentesis, where using a hypodermic needle, a little of the amniotic fluid is withdrawn without doing any harm to the fetus or the placenta, and the fetal cells which were got from that amniotic fluid are analyzed for any chromosomal abnormalities. But we can also know the gender of the baby, whether it is a boy or a girl. And generally when parents identify that it's a girl child, they're not very happy. They may go in for an abortion of that girl child. That is called female feticide. So to prevent that only, the sex determination by a technique called amniocentesis, that is not allowed. They do not reveal the gender of the baby. If too many girl children are aborted, then that will result in imbalance of the male-female ratio, male-female sex ratio in the society. Give 4 points of significance of reproductive health in the society. How do these family planning programs help the society in general? It can help to prevent STDs. Better offsprings are produced with better chances for survival because parents have time and energy to take care of them when the number of children are limited. It prevents population explosion in a country. Also, there is better awareness created in the society about sex-related matters. Name any 2 areas related to reproductive health which has improved over the past 50 years in our country. One is family planning. We find the number of children is restricted in families. Secondly, less mortality rate. If you ask your grandparents, in earlier times, IMR, infant mortality rate, and MMR, that is maternal mortality rate, which is nothing but newborns dying or the lady after giving birth is dying. All that used to be high, but nowadays it is low, very low. Give 2 reasons for variations among progeny formed by sexual reproduction. Why are there variations in the offsprings? 2 reasons. One, there is involvement of 2 different parents and their chromosomes are uniting. Secondly, there is creation of new varieties by recombination, crossing over, or by mutation, etc. Write the names of those parts of a flower which serve the same function as the following do in animals. In animals, testis. So the same part in the flower will be anther. Sperm, that is a male gamete. So in flower, the male gamete is pollen grain. Egg, which is the female gamete. Here it is the ovule. Why are sperms produced in large numbers, whereas egg there may be only one? This is to increase the probability of fertilization as many of the male gametes do not reach their ultimate destination. Many of them may not survive also. So to make up for that, the male gametes which have to move towards the female gamete are produced in large numbers. Give another name for oviduct and state two of its functions. Oviduct is also called fallopian tube. It is the site where fertilization or syngamy happens. It transfers female gametes from the ovary to the uterus. What would be the ratio of chromosome number between egg and its zygote? Egg is haploid. Zygote is diploid. So the ratio will be 1:2. If the egg has 1 chromosome, zygote will have 2. If the egg has 7 chromosomes, zygote will have double of that, 14. Second part of the question, how is human sperm genetically different from ovum? It's not the physical appearance. It is genetically different. How is it genetically different? That is asked. So sperm has either X chromosome or Y chromosome. Ovum will always have only X chromosome. So in human beings, the gender of the baby is determined only by the father, not by the mother. Give 3 functions of uterus. It prepares for cyclic changes during menstrual cycle. It helps in implantation of the embryo and it allows nourishment of the embryo. Compare male and female germ cells in human beings. The germ cells or gametes in male are sperms, which are smaller in size. They are motile. Whereas the female germ cell is the ovum. It is non-motile. It is rounded in shape and only one is produced every 28 days. What is called funeral of the unfertilized egg? That is menstruation. The menstrual flow in which the unfertilized egg is excreted from the body, given out from the body. How are general growth and sexual maturation different from each other? General growth refers to increase in height, weight, size, shape, etc. Whereas sexual maturation refers to changes of puberty, where there are visible secondary sexual characters forming and also there is gamete formation. Why is vegetative propagation practiced for growing some types of plants? See, it can easily be done in the case of seedless plants. It is a very simple, cheap and easy method. And if you're doing methods like cutting, grafting, etc., then flowering of the plants can happen faster. How is pollination different from fertilization? Pollination will occur only in plants. Pollen grains are carried from the anther to the stigma and it will require agents. Whereas fertilization, it can happen in both plants and animals where there is fusion of male and female gametes. But in plants, it is generally double fertilization. Not only is the embryo formed, but even the reserve food material. Will a woman using copper T be protected from STDs? Why? No, she will not be protected because copper T can only serve as a contraceptive. It cannot prevent STDs. What are the advantages of sexual reproduction over asexual? First thing, variations are possible due to crossing over of genes. Secondly, genes from 2 different individuals are coming together. And genetic variation will later on lead to evolution of better organisms. Why is a portion of vas deferens cut in some men? This is for the procedure called vasectomy. It's the terminal sterilization method for men. So here you can see this is the pair of testes. The sperms are being carried by the vas deferens. So on either sides it has been cut and tied up. How does reproduction help in providing stability of a population of species? There is continuity of species. It will equalize the death ratio by bringing in individuals through birth. It maintains body designs of every species, which makes every species unique. There are other questions like assertion reason questions. In this case, there will be two statements given. One is called assertion and the second statement is supposed to be the reason. If both are correct and the reason is the correct reason for assertion, then you have to write option A. If both assertion and reason are correct, but the second statement, reason, is not the correct explanation for assertion, then you have to write B. You choose option C if assertion is correct but reason is wrong, and option D if assertion is false but reason is true. So here are given 5 questions. Okay, let's go through them in detail and know how to write the answers. The first question was, assertion is, the uterus prepares itself every month to receive a fertilized egg. And the reason is, the ovary releases 1 egg every month. So the option is A. Both are correct and reason is the correct explanation for assertion. Second question. Assertion is, prostate gland is the main duct in human male. Reason is, testosterone is important for sperm production. It is option D. Reason is true, but assertion is false. Prostate gland is not a tube, not a duct. It is a gland. So that statement is wrong. Third question. Assertion is, zygote is formed by fusion of sperm with egg. Reason is, the sperm is diploid, but the egg is haploid. That you know is wrong. Sperm is not diploid. It doesn't have double the chromosomes. It is having only half the chromosomes, just like the egg. So option C. Assertion is correct, but reason is wrong. Fourth question, assertion is, pollination is the transfer of pollen grains to the anther. Reason is, pollination is carried out by wind, birds and insects. Look at that. Transfer of pollen grains, is it to the anther? No, from the anther to the stigma. So, assertion is wrong, reason is correct. So, option D. And the last question, assertion is, in human beings, females have a limited fertility period. Reason, menopause occurs between the age of 45 to 50 years. So that is correct. This is also correct. And because of menopause only, after that there is no ovum production. So this is the correct reason. So we will select option A. So like this, carefully you go through the questions and write the answers also carefully. Then you will be able to do well for the exams. So hope you have understood, children. Thank you so much.